The helicopter was a speck against the vast, untamed Scottish sky, a mechanical insect buzzing towards the earth with a precious cargo that held the breath of a nation. On the ground, a carefully managed arrival ceremony at a rural airfield was unfolding with polite, predictable grace. Local dignitaries stood in a neat row, their smiles practiced. A small, vetted crowd of well-wishers, their faces flushed with the cold wind, clutched Union Jacks, their excitement tempered by the formal setting. They had come hoping for a glimpse, a wave, a moment of connection with the future queen. But none of them, not the officials, the security personnel with their discreet earpieces, nor the journalists with their long lenses, could have scripted the raw, human scene about to eclipse the pomp entirely. This would not be a story about a royal procedure, but about a little boy's fear, a mother's instinct, and an embrace that felt profoundly real in a world so often viewed through a lens of curated perfection. The door of the sleek, dark green helicopter swung open, the rotor wash-whipping coats and hair. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, emerged first, her smile warm and professional, every bit the composed senior royal. She turned, expecting to guide her youngest son, Prince Louis, down the steps. But Louis, just 5 years old, appeared in the doorway, his small frame silhouetted against the aircraft's dark interior. The confident, often mischievous boy seen in birthday photographs was gone. In his place was a child overwhelmed by the roaring noise, the strange, immense landscape, and the sea of unfamiliar faces staring up at him. His lip trembled. His eyes, wide with anxiety, scanned the crowd before locking onto his mother. The journey had been long, the landing loud and unsettling for young senses. In that frozen second, protocol hung in the balance. Catherine's smile softened, her official demeanor melting away as she read the silent plea in her son's eyes. She extended her hand, not as a princess, but as a mom. Louis stumbled forward, not down the steps with royal decorum, but into the safe harbor of her arms, burying his face in her coat. She knelt, enveloping him completely, her cheek resting against his sandy hair, whispering words only he could hear. The wind stole the sound, but the image was deafening. It was a universal language, understood by every parent, every child who has ever sought solace. A collective, silent awe seemed to sweep through the crowd. The flags stopped waving. The cameras, however, did not stop clicking, capturing not a pose, but a private moment of reassurance that had, for a few sacred seconds, become entirely public. The embrace lasted only a handful of heartbeats, but its echo seemed to hang in the chilly air. As Louis's small shoulders relaxed, the official world slowly clicked back into gear. Catherine rose, her hand firmly holding his, and they turned to greet the waiting dignitaries. Louis, now shielded by his mother's presence, managed a shy, wobbly smile, peeking out from behind her leg before remembering his training and offering a small, polite wave. The ceremony proceeded, the handshakes, the accepting of a small bouquet from a local child, the pleasantries exchanged. Yet the entire tenor of the event had shifted. The crowd's energy was no longer just respectful. It was empathetic, warm, protective. They watched as Catherine, throughout the brief walkabout, kept a constant, physical connection with Louis, a hand on his shoulder, her fingers laced with his, often bending down to point something out, drawing his attention to a friendly face or an interesting detail in the distance, seamlessly integrating him into the duty while prioritizing his comfort. This was not a distracted parent. This was a mother masterfully multitasking the dual roles of royal and parent in full view. The press pack, a group normally hardened by countless staged events, found themselves oddly moved. One veteran photographer, a man who had covered the family for decades, later confessed he had to lower his camera for a moment. "You see the uniforms, the titles, the distance," he said. "But in that moment, you just saw a scared little boy and his mom. It cuts through everything." Meanwhile, across the country, the images were already traveling at the speed of light. In cozy living rooms, people watching the news on television leaned forward. On smartphones during commutes, people scrolled past the image, then scrolled back. Social media feeds, so often arenas of division and cynicism, were momentarily united by a surge of pure feeling. The comment sections filled not with debate, but with shared experience. "We've all been that child," wrote one user. "Seeing the princess kneel in that mud, not caring about her coat. That's motherhood," posted another. A third simply stated, "No crown, just a mom." The moment transcended geography and status. It became a mirror. Parents saw themselves. Children recognized their own vulnerabilities. It highlighted not the privilege of their lives, but the common human challenges within it. Managing a child's fear in a public setting, providing comfort under scrutiny, the powerful, wordless communication between parent and child. The royal family's narrative is often one of tradition and duty, but this was a chapter on nurture and normalcy, and the public was reading it with rapt attention. The royal party moved from the airfield to their engagement, a visit to a community center hosting a children's art workshop. The transition from the windy tarmac to the bright, noisy room could have been another shock for Louis. Instead, something beautiful unfolded, safely anchored by the initial reassurance, and perhaps inspired by the colorful chaos of paint and paper, the boy's natural spirit began to reemerge. Catherine, sensing this, gave him gentle encouragement. Soon, Louis was sitting at a low table, his concentration absolute, tongue peeking out as he carefully painted a brilliant blue swirl. Catherine, engaged in conversation with organizers, kept a fond, watchful eye on him, her pride evident. It was a complete, unspoken journey from fear to engagement, witnessed in the span of an hour. Later, as they prepared to depart, the crowd outside the center had grown, drawn by the now viral news of the earlier moment. As they emerged, Louis, holding his now dry painting, was beaming. The same crowd that had witnessed his vulnerability now cheered for his resilience. A woman called out, "Well done, Louis." He grinned and waved his painting in response. This time, when he reached for his mother's hand, it was not out of fear, but out of habit and shared success. The drive back to the helicopter was quiet, the Scottish dusk painting the hills in purples and golds. For Louis, exhausted but happy, the helicopter was no longer a scary monster, but simply the way home. The return flight to Windsor was peaceful. That evening, within the private walls of their home, the public narrative faded into irrelevance. There was no press, no crowd. There was just a family. Louis likely chattered about his painting, his adventure. Catherine and William would have listened. The events of the day, just another chapter in the story of raising their children. The power of the public moment lay in its authenticity precisely because it was a fragment of a much larger private reality. It was a crack in the royal facade that revealed not scandal, but something far more relatable, the exhausting, rewarding, emotional work of parenting. The monarchy sometimes feels like a historical institution, but in that embrace, it felt human, contemporary, and emotionally relevant. It showcased a modern royal family where duty and parenthood are not separate spheres, but intertwined responsibilities. Catherine, in that instinctive kneel, had communicated more about the values of the future monarchy than any speech could. It was a silent testament to empathy, to putting a child's emotional need before public expectation, a powerful model of leadership that is both strong and soft. The impact of the moment rippled outwards in the days that followed, far beyond sentimental headlines. Child psychologists and parenting experts were invited onto morning talk shows, not to discuss royal protocol, but to analyze the interaction as a textbook example of secure attachment and emotional intelligence. They praised Catherine's responsive parenting, her immediate recognition of nonverbal cues, her provision of co-regulation by offering calm and safety, and her gentle reintegration of Louis into the public expectation without dismissing his feelings. She didn't shush him or push him forward. She met him where he was, one expert noted. That's what builds resilience. The moment sparked wider conversations about parenting in the spotlight, the pressure on all families to appear perfect, and the universal need for children to feel safe. Meanwhile, charitable organizations supporting children's mental health and well-being saw a noticeable, if fleeting, increase in traffic to their websites. The image was used, with permission, in campaigns promoting childhood emotional literacy, with the tagline, "Comfort first, always." The embrace became a cultural shorthand for compassionate, child-led parenting. In a surprising turn, even staunch Republicans, those who questioned the institution of monarchy, found little to critique. How could one argue against a mother comforting her child? The moment disarmed ideology with its sheer humanity. It became a neutral ground where people of all opinions could meet and agree on a fundamental truth. Within the palace walls, while no official comment was made, aides were understood to be quietly pleased. In an era where the royal family must continually earn public goodwill, such authentic, unplanned moments were worth more than any staged photo op. It strengthened Catherine's public image as not just a style icon or a dedicated worker, but as the warm, nurturing heart of the family, a role the public deeply values. The narrative also subtly bolstered the image of Prince William as part of a strong, united parenting team. The story was about Catherine and Louis, but it implicitly spoke of a family unit where such nurturing is the norm. For Louis, the day likely became a memory of a scary moment followed by a great adventure, solidified by the safety of his mother's arms. For the public, it became a memory they held on to, a reminder that behind the titles, the crowns, and the centuries of tradition are people who experience the same fundamental emotions, fears, and loves as everyone else. Years later, when historians look back at the reign of King William and Queen Catherine, the helicopter embrace may be a footnote, absent from treaties or constitutional crises. But in the emotional ledger of the monarchy's relationship with the people, it will stand as a significant deposit. It represented a pivot towards a new kind of visibility, one that allowed for vulnerability without weakness and humanity without losing majesty. The moment proved that the public's love isn't just earned through grand spectacles or solemn duty, but also through these shared flashes of real life. It deepened the bond because it was an offering of trust. The family allowed the world to see a crack in the perfect facade, and the world responded not with criticism, but with an outpouring of understanding. For Louis, growing up in perhaps the world's most famous family, that image will forever be a part of his story. But, more importantly, the feeling behind it, the unconditional safety of a parent's embrace, is the part that will shape the man he becomes. He will face countless cameras, duties, and public expectations. But the foundation, publicly witnessed and celebrated by millions, is one of profound security. The embrace on the Scottish tarmac was a beginning, not an end. It set a tone for how this generation of royals would navigate their unique path, honoring tradition while embracing the modern understanding that strength includes emotional honesty. It showed that duty is not just about serving countries, but about serving the emotional needs of a small boy on a windy day, and in doing so, serving the public's need for connection. The tears some fans reported were not tears of mere sympathy for a cute child, but tears of recognition. They saw their own struggles, their own comforting embraces, reflected in the most unlikely of mirrors. In a world often feeling fragmented and harsh, this small, silent moment of love and protection became a universal touchstone, a reminder of our shared softness. The helicopter eventually took off, carrying the family away, but the warmth of that moment lingered on the ground, settling into the collective memory as a perfect, imperfect testament to the fact that no matter who you are or where you are, sometimes all you need is a hug from your mom.